how would you like to achieve your first million? And today we have a special guest. His name is Alex, and he is the founder of Ideal Wealth Grower. So, Alex, tell us, what are the 5 steps that you recommend entrepreneurs in order to set the first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
It's a couple of things. I would say the first thing is you need to be absolutely convinced about what you're actually doing, what you want to do, and why you want to do it. Then the second thing I would say is the mindset that you need to have or develop. I see a lot of our clients really in need of developing the proper mindset. Then I think it's often forgotten that when you are the founder, you're the entrepreneur, you are basically the leader, that people look at you. We kind of sometimes forget that. So that the third step would be always be aware that you're a role model, especially when it comes to your body language, right? The way you walk down the hall or the way you appear on a Zoom call or whatever it may be, the attitude, the way you're basically presenting yourself. That's what I mean by being a role model. Then the fourth thing I would say is you got to be inspirational, because you have to assume that not everything will always go smooth. And that is both to yourself, but that's easier because you probably have a vision. But for anybody that you're asking to work for you, you want to be inspirational. And I mentioned vision already, but I meant that more in a leadership way, because I have to learn myself. The longer you're working in a business, the more that leadership role is kind of refining and you're mastering it. And there are so many different aspects and facets, especially as your business grows. So really growing into this role of a leader, not just how it looks like from the outside, but also how you're actually really occupying that from the inside.
Transition between the corporate job and become an entrepreneur. We have a lot of listeners, Alex, that they are working in corporate, right? And they feel that they are kind of in a golden cage. They're getting well paid, very good money, but at the end of the day, they only have 3-4 weeks holiday. And when you hear stories, they go on holiday, they spend a lot of money in the holiday, and you even wondering how come you spending so much money in the holiday and all you get is, well, I only have 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I make good money. I work really hard. So what they don't have is time. We can call it a cash rich and time poor. However, I was reading in your bio that while you were working, you were doing something amazing parallel, which is investing in property, which could be one very good transition for people that have a nice corporate job, right? Cash rich, time poor, that want to start to design this financial freedom, the financial independence. So tell us about how you, what get you inspired that even you were working, you decided to run a property investment business on the side. Do you have something in your back of your mind that regardless than working in corporate, um, you know, I need to take care of my own future because these people can come one day and tell me you fire and I don't know what I'm gonna do. So how you come on with this plan?
Right. Well, there are two aspects to it. And if you allow me, I would like to touch briefly on both. The first one, you just asked me if you're an entrepreneur, what are the 5 steps? I believe, and I am basically doing this for our mentoring clients or clients that join our programs, is I strongly encourage them, even though they have this job, high paying job, like you were saying, I strongly encourage them to start an LLC, start a business, in our case, for the purpose of investing. And that part of starting a business allows me to help them to do all those things that we just said that an entrepreneur should learn to do, those 5 steps and a few more, to become really impersonation and really being fully in, I'm a leader, I'm the owner of my business, I'm the creator of my own future. That's what I always say. So that's the one aspect. You can have a job and you can still be the owner of a business. Now, the other aspect, and to answer your question about the investing, is while I was working, I was looking at real estate investing because I knew that you have 5 ways to make income, and I can speak about what those are from a real estate investment. But like you said, we already don't have enough time. So how do you actually do that? And what I discovered is called turnkey investing. So number one, you're looking at where are properties that I can invest in that are really performing well. Not so much are they close to me, but are they performing well? And then number two, can I get one of those properties through a turnkey provider? And a turnkey provider, in a nutshell, has three aspects. One is they find a property that needs some work, that needs some renovation, so they can buy it relatively cheap and renovate it so that everything is fresh and new bathrooms, new kitchen, new electric, new plumbing, new floors, all that good stuff. So that's one part that they do. Is basically like a construction and renovation part of the business. The second part they should have is basically a real estate agency. So the property has been finished, is almost done. Now it needs to be sold. They're doing it basically the same way like a real estate agency, but under the umbrella and under the roof of the turnkey provider. And the third part that is very, very important to be combined is to manage the properties. So what does that mean for us as investors? They basically take the risk that they actually finish the renovation and do everything at a price that when they say they sell me or you the property, let's say for $180,000, the first thing that happens is an appraiser is sent from the bank. They go through and they say, is this thing really worth $180,000? And if yes, we get the financing. So obviously the turnkey provider knows this. So they shouldn't over renovate or over embellish. They make it so that it can appraise. Then they sell it to us. And because they sell it to us directly, there's no other agency. So we don't have to pay the 6% agency fees that you normally pay when you buy a house. And the important thing, why is property management in the same organization? Because they can go back to the renovation team if something breaks. And so what we can do with that is, for the first year, typically we can get a warranty. So everything that the renovators touch should be good for a year, right? Like it's basically new. So that means when the tenants move into this freshly renovated house and they start using everything, if anything isn't perfect, they can call property management. It's the same company and get it fixed from the renovation team. But here comes the most important part. How do you do this when you're still having your job and you're making good income? The turnkey provider is doing all of it. They're doing the finding, they're doing the renovating, they're doing the advertising, they go out with the appraiser, and they're doing the management. And then at the end of the month, they send you the money. That's why I can have a portfolio of 10 properties and I'm spending about 2 hours a month to manage the whole thing. And anybody who has a job can do that.
So the name, can you repeat, Alex? Is the name is
like basically the
turnkey provider,
like
right?
as if you basically as if you say, I see a beautiful house, I want it, I turn the key and open the door, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the whole secret, Alex, is to identify the turnkey providers in the locations that you want to invest in the property. And we talk about a very interesting concept. You said properties that perform well. In this broadcast, Alex, we are a big fan of property investment. Number one, my first business was in property. We managed to sell over 5 million in London doing rent to rent. We're renting a house and then renting the rooms individually. I did this business for several years, so I'm very grateful for property, and I think that was my first business, and that's why in this broadcast we're interviewing 500 multimillionaires, 1 out of 5. Yeah, before it's 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6. Now I'm almost sure that 1 out of 5 of the entrepreneurs that come to this broadcast on Unstoppable, they are all property millionaires. So the question is the following: can you, 2 questions. Number one, can you define in your own concept what a well-performing property is? And number two, why do you think that in this broadcast on Unstoppable, 5 steps how to make your first million, why do you think that 1 out of 5 people that show up to these interviews somehow they're property investors. They lots of them doing different strategy, development, warehouse, commercial, residential, buy to own, flipping, all over United States, actually all over the world, but they're also coming from abroad as well.
Yeah.
So these two things: number one, what is a property that performs well, and number two, why do you think that a property investment is a good vehicle to create wealth? And the statistic of this broadcast actually prove that.
Yeah. So the answer to the first question, the way I at least approach it, and our clients, I teach them to approach it that way, is you want to have a few things, really easy things to say, is it even worth my time to look at it? And it doesn't matter whether it's a property that you find yourself or you get from a turnkey provider. To me, for a renovated property, I always like to see that it meets what's called the 1% rule. So if I have somebody and says, okay, I have this beautiful $200,000 property, I look at it, how close to $2,000 rent per month does it make? Because that's 1% of the purchase price. Now, if it's 1,950
I look at this also myself exactly with this correlation that you do.
right, so that's intensely all the other things. Does it have good schools? Does it have good transportation? Is it in a safe area? Is it a nice neighborhood? All this other stuff, but that's the first thing to say. And what we are doing in our team at IdealWealthGrower is the different turnkey providers we're working with. They already know that we wouldn't even look at a property where it costs 200,000 and only gets $1,000 rent. We would just not look at it. So what happens is they're basically not sending those to me. If it's not pretty close to 1%, they don't send it. Now, there's a little bit of a nuance I want to say for your audience. If you are looking to buy a brand new property, you can probably go down to about 0.8. So that would mean like if you had a $200,000 or $250,000 property, you can maybe go with like 2,100 or 1,800. The reason is it's typically more expensive to build a brand new property, meeting all the current rules and stuff like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can get the rent very much higher than the average around the area. But what obviously saves you there is that in a brand new property, you get pretty much all kinds of warranties from the builder, from the insurance and so forth. So for the first 5 years, you don't really have to expect any repairs that you have to pay out of pocket. And this makes a huge difference. And why this works is in our approach, when we have a renovated property, we say you need to put 5% for vacancy, 5% for maintenance, and 5% for capital expenditure type of repairs. Well, if you have a brand new property, the only thing you need to do is the 5% for vacancy, but maintenance and capex shouldn't really exist. So if your rent is 10% lower, you're still basically making the same cash flow. So that's the on what is a well-performing property. Now, on the other end, why is it that 1 in 5, and I would hope it's actually more than 1 in 5, have properties is actually in a way, and I know you're already smiling.
I say, I'm joined to this podcast. Yeah, this podcast is open to all wealthy entrepreneurs, and but we never expecting this statistic, but it's actually what is happening when out of 1 out of 5 of the people that we interview, they are all property investors. I always ask this question: why do you think it's a good vehicle to create wealth?
Well, I will answer the question, and it's kind of funny because you mentioned our company is called Ideal Wealth Grower. And the ideal is obviously we want to help our clients in an ideal way, but it's also an abbreviation. And this is, in my opinion, the answer to your question, why do so many people invest in properties? If you look at it as an abbreviation, what does it mean? It means I, the generates income. Then you have D, the property by law is allowed to be depreciated on your taxes. So if you buy a $275,000 property, you can write off $10,000 every year for 27 and a half years. There are other ways, but that's the D.
The depreciation.
The E, right? The E is equity. That means number one, you put your 20% down payment or 25%. That's your first part of equity. But the other part of equity is also when the tenants help you pay down the mortgage, they basically pay the mortgage. If you look at a new mortgage, every year they're basically paying off in the first few years anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000. So that's additional equity in addition to your down payment that is kind of growing in property. So we have I, D, E. Now we come to A, which is appreciation. So that is also oftentimes misunderstood. If you have, let's just take a simple example, a $200,000 property that increased by 3% in value, appreciated by 3%, right? That's $6,000 in that year. And you put 20% down, that's $40,000. It appreciated by $6,000, that's 15% just on that. On your money, the other money is from the bank and they don't get the appreciation, you get it, right? So appreciation, and then L, which is the other part of the thing, is leverage. You put 20% or 25% down and the bank puts 80 or 75% down. Now you show me any other investment where you get those 5 things as I just explained them. You can do this with gold, you can do this with Bitcoin, you can do this with stocks. There's basically nothing else, and that's the answer why at least 1 in 5, maybe 1 in 5 have properties.
Yeah, and that's great. And Alex, so what inspiration came from? How you decided that you wanted even having a parallel, right? Because when I was starting my business, I was exactly how I did it. I was working as a room service in the Hilton in London, in Canary Wharf, and at the same time I was building my business on the side, my property business. And I remember it took me like 2 years to a certain point that I remember I have around 8 houses, and I'm thinking that I have always 2 rooms empty, and the rooms that were kind of rented for 500, 600 pounds, and because I have in my work, my job, I was exhausted. So it's unlike 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, I'm totally exhausted, waking up 4 a.m., going to the heater to prepare the breakfast, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I have to be there. Then after 4 p.m., I was doing all the viewings. I'm going to arrive home. And then one day I realized that for the pattern of 3, 4 months, 5 months, I always have 2 rooms empty because I didn't have time. And one day I took the decision and said, hold on, if I rent these 2 rooms, that would take me maybe 1, maximum 2 days, I'm going to be making the same money that I'm getting paid in the heat from the whole month. And that was the day that I quit my job like 18 years ago, the corporate job. So when was your turning point that you decided that you don't need to go to your work anymore, or if you want to do it, it's just because you want to, not because you have to? When that moment arrived, and were you scared, or were you concerned about?
No, actually, I mean, in this concept that I'm doing as a mentor for our clients, I call that the time freedom point number, right? And every person is different. I had one myself long before I ever had a business helping other people doing the investments. And so it's basically to say, if I look at everything that I'm spending on average per month for food, for the mortgage of my house, for my car, for vacation, for whatever kind of toys I have and so forth, and you average it out per month right now in today's numbers, in pounds or dollars or euros, whatever the number is today. If some fairy came along and say, okay, Harry, this money is going to come to you every month, you don't need to go to work anymore. That's basically your time freedom point number. Now, in my case, if I remember right, it was $6,000. And then I basically calculated backwards and said, okay, if I get $300 positive cash flow for every investment property, then I basically need 20 of those to get to my $6,000. Now, when you say, why would people continue to work while they are on this journey to that time freedom point, is you have to ask yourself, how do I get there the quickest? And 2 things apply. Number 1, you want to be a good steward of your money, which I always say you should put a minimum 10%, ideally 15 or 20% at the moment that the money comes into you, aside for investing, and then live off the rest. Not the other way around. Don't wait until the end of the month. Take it away right when it comes in. put it aside into your investing account or in your LLC and live off the rest. So that's one source of income, is your job. But then when you think about it, so now you have your first property and it gives you your $300 or $400 a month in cash flow. Then you get the next one and the next one. And so if you still can pay out of your job for your normal life, you can get to these down payments for one property after the next faster. And if you think about, okay, in the first year, I may be getting $4,000 out of my first property. Now, in the second year, I have two properties, I probably have $10,000. That means in the third year, I already make per year enough money to buy an additional house in addition to my savings. And so it kind of accelerates the time that you need. And what also happens, obviously, when we make that very first calculation, you say, I want $6,000, I need 20 houses. In reality, you're not going to have the houses and never increase the rent. You have the mortgage being paid down, you get mortgages paid off. So in my case, I said at the beginning, I want $6,000. I think I need 20 houses, and I have 10 houses, and I'm not really working. I don't have a job or anything. I have my $6,000, actually more than that, because of the increase in income and so forth. But the point is, to answer your question, you first start out to say, what is my time freedom number? And as long as you can still work and take a certain part of your income to support your investing, plus the money that comes in from the investment, the faster you get to that number. That's the reason why you continue working and investing in parallel.
Yeah. And Alex, the regarding mindset, I when why property business, sometimes if something goes wrong in property, we're talking about a lot of money, and
Right.
some people sometimes it's even difficult to get back on. Some people can never back on and don't want to touch it again.
Right.
So can you describe what is the good, the bad of the ugly, specifically the bad and the ugly, how in property things can go really really wrong, because trial and error in property is something which is really expensive. When I started, I didn't even know what a mentor and a coach means, and down the line, I built it without from scratch, and it was a very, I won't say painful, but it was a lot of trial and error. I have a lot of setbacks, a lot of things went wrong, and I have to make this money that I didn't make, and back. So it was very exhausted experience, and what it make the huge difference is after 5 years that I'm in the business, I joined a property mastermind, and I discovered number one, what is a coach? Number two, what is a mentor? Number three, what is a mastermind? And number four, that my business, I didn't invent it. It had been out there for a long time, and there were lots of people doing it bigger than me and longer than me. And I thought that I invented my one, and it was a very lonely process for me because I just didn't know what was out there. And when I started the business, I'm focused. I'm working in the Hilton. The rest, try to build this thing, and I don't have any clue what I'm doing, and learning everything by trial and error. And so describe, especially in this sector, what is the importance of a mentor or next, and also what can go wrong in the trial and error scenario when you do specifically this vehicle property.
Yeah, well, basically they're very closely connected, those two things. And that's why I'm basically offering a mentorship program, because I want to kind of pay forward what I learned and to some extent paid for. The mentorship, if I were to be asked what is the definition, is basically taking somebody's experience, updating it for today. So if it took me 10, 15 years to gain that experience, well, the stuff that was working 10 or 15 years ago is not maybe working anymore. So I take the experience, update it to modern times today, and then take out all the mistakes, all the things that cost money, and only confer and help people with the good stuff where I tried it, I learned it, it works, you can learn it, but you don't have to make the mistakes. Now, that's fundamental part of it. But the other part that has to do with mindset, and you mentioned mindset earlier, what I'm observing from our clients quite often is, especially when they are well-earning people in like a management or lower leadership position in a company, they get very much conditioned, and it's not a flaw or fault or anything, it's just the way the work is, that you are basically following other people's guidance. You are an employee among other employees, and there's somebody you're reporting to. What I'm trying to do when people become mentoring clients in our system, I'm already, first I ask them to start an LLC for the purpose of their investing. But the important mindset thing is you are now the king or queen of this LLC. You are basically the same thing like the owner of the business that you are working at. And yes, we're maybe not bringing in our investing business literally employees, but what we are bringing in, we're bringing in the bank that works for you, and they paid for it. You pay them fees, right? You bring in property management, you're giving them 8, 9, 10% of the rent. So they work for you and you pay them. You're bringing in an appraiser. They go out and look, is the property really worth that? And you pay them. You bring in an inspector. They go out, check everything, make an 85-page report, and you pay them. So in a way, I always draw this image to say you are the king or the queen sitting in the middle, and all these entities are working for you like employees. So you have to learn in your mindset that you are their employer, you are the boss, you are the queen, you are the king. And when you make click in your head to say, okay, I'm in charge, it's my business, they work for me. By the way, Harry, if any of the ones I just mentioned doesn't deliver to your liking, what would you do?
You find
another one, yeah, in the employment area, that's called you getting fired. That's what you also have to learn, right? If you're the king or queen of your own empire and somebody doesn't perform to what you're paying them for, and you told them and they promised to you, well, then you got to kick them out and find somebody else. And by doing this, you learning how to basically be a leader. And it also, in many ways, I found is fostering that transition, right? A minute ago, we spoke about the time freedom point. What happens with most of my clients is when they are like 5 or 6 years in their investing thing, they already see the cash flow coming in from the different investments, and they start confidently go to their boss and say, hey, boss, you know, I'm normally doing 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I can't do this anymore. You have to decide if 30 hours is enough or I have to find something else. And surprisingly, most people listening, I can tell you, most bosses rather have you 30 hours than no hours.
absolutely, right? So because you're already trained and you're good at your job, so
exactly.
they will do everything.
So you're going basically on half time. Now that doesn't mean that you only get half pay, but you're going down.
If you like your job, you know, it's a huge difference. Going to work because you want to work because you have to.
But there's also a balancing act.
Huge difference.
I agree with you, Harry. There's also a balancing act. Oftentimes, when you really feel I'm dependent on the job, I have the job to have healthcare, I have the job because it pays me dependable money, I have the job because I've done it for a long time, it can oftentimes feel like you don't really have that much of an alternative. As soon as you start seeing your own business, you're making investments, cash flow is coming in, you're looking at the next property, you are in charge, you deciding who you want allowed to work for you or not, your mindset changes to see, I can do it, I'm in charge, I'm leading my business, I'm generating my own income. The whole relationship to your normal job changes because you proving to yourself that you can do what the employer that you're working for is also doing, and you can do it on your own. And sooner or later, you have to decide, do I really like the job enough to stay in this relationship or not? And if you say, no, it's really been a drag or it's gotten worse over the years, well, you already know that you're on a trajectory. I have a really funny thing. I want to just say this to finish this part. In the beginning, oftentimes my mentoring clients are a little hesitant, not quite sure if they should start a business, not really having the mindset yet. Then they start developing it. About within the first 6, 7 months, they're now becoming king or queen of the empire. They start hiring, they start investing. Now, the funny thing, Harry, that happens after that, like month 8, 9, they're so addicted that they want to actually do anything and everything. They're selling their jet ski just so they can buy another. I have to kind of hold them back, right? So in the beginning, they're not sure if they're gonna even buy anything. Towards the end of the first year, they want to make everything into money to invest more, like an addiction, right? So it's weird for the mentor like me. First, you have to encourage them, to mentor them, to teach them, and then you have to hold them back so they don't go crazy.
Yeah, because you have a huge impact in the mental health, positive impact, because imagine if you have a job that you depend on it, and you have your and your family depend on that job, you have coming from the point of mental health, you have stress, you have you see, we did an interview yesterday with a physician, with the doctor, right, an urologist, that he was making so much money in practice as urologist, but what happened is, because he's a doctor, he ever to see the patients himself, and the guy ended up overweight with the huge stress and mental health issue, and no problem with cash, but cash rich big time. uh, Now he come to the realization that he had to close this practice and something else, because it's affecting him mentally and healthily to the point that he reached so overweight and whatever that can give him a heart attack. Right now, his new business actually, which is very happy, is about keeping physicians healthy, right, and don't cope with that. The point of the story is that emotional pain translate in physical pain. This emotional pain, this stress that you're talking when you have a job and you depend on the job, and you truly depend on that you that emotional stress and pain, that if you hold it for longer, translate in additional pain. You finish overweight, you can give you a heart attack, and can give you over stress. However, when things start to work out, and I remember this, I'm the example, when I started to build my first business back in the day, it was all about working and making the business work and keep profitable, right? But health, it was 1% important for me, close to zero. Mental health, 1%, close to zero, nothing. It was 99%, 98% about making this work. I remember that when I arrived to the office, and my team, I said, well, guys, yesterday I 12, 14 hours working with no stop. And I was like, wow, look at Harry, how much is working. And looking back, now if somebody come to me with the business proposal that I have to work 14 hours, I'm like, man, it doesn't really. Now I'm in the space that is 80%, health and mental health. Look at you, for example, now you are on holiday in Spain. Look what it do to your mental health. Look what it can do to your physical health, right? Working for an environment that you are from holiday, right? And then when you go this 20% to work, you really, really, okay, and you can do more in this 20% that the rest of the people are doing it. So the question is, when do I'm going to talk about later on about leadership, because this is part of the process. We start businesses and we never know that, oh, okay, we have a product, we're selling, we're making some money profit, there you go, we are in business. But down the line, the more you evolve, you realize that if you don't work on your head, on yourself, this business is going to suffer, it's not going to be sustainable. And number two, we start the business sometimes with the wrong priorities. And number three, we don't know that we need to turn into leaders in order to grow and expand this business sustainable. In my business in particular, the property, one day I arrived to the office and my manager told me, Harry, go home, we don't need you. And what do you mean you don't need me? I said, you travel the world if you want. In fact, don't come here because you have nothing to do. You're talking to us all the time. We need to work here. So somehow they me as an employees, but I turn them into leaders into the organization, to the point that they don't need me, and they have some sense of belonging, that that they literally tell me, go on holiday and you will see, we show you that we can do better if you're not around, which it was an amazing experience. So when do you realize this point from entrepreneur to leadership and mental health, personal development, coaching, mentoring, all those elements come into in equation? When you discover that you do have to work on yourself, when you discover that that you have all the business and strategies there to make money or already working when you are an employee. But if you don't work in your personal health, if you don't work on your leadership skills, you won't be able to scale and grow. How you
Yeah,
realize?
yeah. I would say it's a couple of different things. One is you have to begin to ask yourself, what is the most valuable thing in life? And if you really dwell on that a little bit, I have found myself and everybody else I've ever asked, everybody says, if you really think about it, the most valuable thing is time. That's the one thing you can get more of. We all have the same. The day is the same, the hour, the minute, everything is the same. We all have a certain amount of it. So now that then begs the question, what do I do with it? And in one sense, what you do most of the time, I started there, you started there, most of the people listening to us today or watching us today probably started there, is what we're doing is we're exchanging time for money. And what we really should be looking for, find a way, how can we get some sort of a mechanism that generates money which we need to live and support our family and stuff without exchanging time for it. And one of those things I always say is, for example, an investment property. It's like an engine that is basically operating and throwing out money because somebody else is allowed to use it and live in it, like you're renting your property. By the way, I think it's sometimes helpful for people to make that mental step a little easier when you ask yourself, I mentioned earlier, the D in ideal stands for depreciation. Why is that? At least in the US, and it's pretty much in most other countries, the government says, why do I or how do I help a business to grow? And the answer is, I give them some incentive to invest into the business. And obviously, when they buy a machine, that machine is only going to run for so long. And every machine that you buy for different kinds of purposes, the government says, okay, this machine, like a printer, is maybe good for 3 years. A car is maybe good for 5 years. And in that same thought pattern, they say an investment property is good for 27 and a half years. That's the lifespan of that machine. So if you look at it that way, the more of those machines you can own and rent out to other people, the more these machines are going to generate the money for you, so you don't have to exchange your time for the money, right? So that's a little bit of an aspect of how do I actually look at it. Now, the other part about how do I now evolve from just being a business owner who maybe understands the process into a leader, and in my observation, and it's true for myself, I believe I really made the transition when I started trusting people.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually showed me that the trust that I put into them was warranted. When I said to my assistant, that was the first thing that happened many years ago, we need to do this and this and this, we need to do this research, we need to help our people, our clients, we need to send them this and that and that. And I said, do you think you can do this? And she said, yeah, I figured it out. And a month later, we had a little meeting with our group of clients, small group at the time. And I said, okay, so how is everything? And the answer that almost everybody said is, Reka is amazing. I'm okay. They're not looking at the process. They're not looking and they're not complaining. They identifying the person that is doing everything for them. And it to the point even today, right? I'm oftentimes say when I get an opportunity, and thank you for that, Harry, to be on a show, I always say I'm just a monkey who appears on the TV or on the screen. Everything, the booking, the organizing, the running the calendar, the writing the emails, this is all my team. Right. In cases, I don't even know exactly what they do and how they do it anymore.
No, tell me about
Because,
it.
well, because I trust them. I know that they're doing it because they want to make and continue to make the business successful. And as long as every time I ask my clients, how are you feeling? How is it going? What is going on? And they said, Reka is amazing. Nadine is amazing. Alfred is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I need to know. So that when
100%.
when that point happens, when you put trust in people that work for you, And the response you get from the business, from your clients and so forth, is that they like what the people you trust do, then I believe you can say, now I really made it into a leadership role, which also, by the way, frees up your time. There's a very, and I hope you allow me, Harry, I really have a big point between the difference between leading and managing. Like, to me, I'm looking forward, I'm strategizing, I'm out for where is the business going to go, what kind of offers do we make, what kind of new incentives do we create, who do we partner with, all the stuff into the future. And management is taking direction from a leader and making it happen. It's kind of like on Star Trek, right? Where the captain says, number one, make it happen. That's management. Number one has to make it happen. I have time to look at where we're going in the future. And I think too many people put management and leadership in the same bucket. No, let your team manage everything. You're the leader that is planning for the future so that the team and the company can be successful.
And then the most important thing in building this team, we call it the goal star team. And I remember when I had my property business. At the beginning, you have plumbers, right? And I'm looking at this plumber, calling the plumber, can you fix the boiler? And every time this plumber is coming, is the fan? I had to replace the fan. I'm like, how come every 5, 6 times it's always the fan? A part of something else. So with time, with experience, you start to bring to your organization the right people that align with your values. Yeah, and my plumber that I have today have been working with me for 15 years. And to be honest, when something goes wrong in the house, he has the keys of the property. He goes and fix it, and he tell me, Harry, it's 500, 600, 1,000, 2,000, and I don't even need to have this long conversation I need to have before with my plumbers, which, okay, why are you charging me this? Where do you buy this piece? Why this so expensive? Why do you spend so many hours? All these long hours that I used to waste speaking with the contractors, right? It's all gone for years because you already the person you have a relationship with this company with you that is trust is more than is we are kind of a family in a way, right? We've been around for so long and doing so much complex project, and I have paid him thousands and thousands of pounds for all his services to do on my own property. So that relationship is tied with the electricians, same thing with the people that were with us. You this relationship building into years is amazing. But my electrician, my plumber, the people that work with me, they all have the keys to my house, all of them. They're gonna open, and they know the tenant, they know me. So however, I people working for me that stole 4,000 pounds, and I went on holiday, and when I come back, all the money was gone, and it was a tough problem that I had to deal with building the company. And I was the kind of person, I don't trust anybody at the beginning of the business, but I have to gradually let that go. Otherwise, there was no chance that I can grow. It was not perfect. I have these bad experiences, maybe because the employees of the team, people that I brought, didn't meet our values. And you realize that you have to become better at hiding. And this is a lesson that takes time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is in a nutshell also why I like the turnkey providers so much, because you see, in your case, when you say I live in London, I have my properties in London, I can have people come like plumber, electrician and stuff. Now look at my situation. When I first started, I lived in Santa Barbara, California, and my first properties were in Ohio. That's almost 2,000,
Wow, my
right?
goodness.
The next properties were in Idaho. So when you're 1,000 or 2,000 miles away, you cannot have an individual plumber and an individual electrician or stuff.
Exactly, going all up and down the country.
Right. So what we basically discovered is the most important trusting relationship is actually to the turnkey provider. They were the ones who renovated. They were the ones who sold us the property. They also the ones who maintain it and keep it running and get the tenants and stuff. Now you have to keep one thing in mind, and I want to say this more a little bit self-serving to your audience, but as a model, I think it is interesting to consider. When my clients come to me and want to invest, yes, we do all the stuff we said about setting up the business and so forth, but obviously they also want to invest. Well, guess what? I introduce them to the same turnkey providers that I invest in.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is, so client number one buys the first property, and I already have 4 from the same provider. Client number 2 buys 1 or 2. Client number 3 buys 1. So over time, which we actually have, we have turnkey providers where myself and my clients have bought 20, 30, 40 properties. So now imagine something goes wrong. Their plumber suddenly sucks and charges outrageous fees. I can pick up the phone, whether it's for my property or any of our clients, call
100%.
this, I call the CEO of that turnkey
Turnkey
provider.
provider.
Johnny, I hear complaints. You know how many properties you have with us. Do you want us to go somewhere else and fire your ass, or do you want to fix it?
100%.
And most of the time, they want to fix it.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah, I
that's a
mean,
little
it was
bit
the
of a-
same situation with the plumbers. Once you have volume, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
the relationship with team, with the people that work with you is completely different. Change the
Yeah,
whole
and that-
dynamic
Yeah.
completely, because it more and never get overcharged. You never get overcharged. There's an understanding from the provider of the service that will doing this professional, maybe to a single landlord or individual landlord, they can overcharge this, they can overcharge that, they can go away with things, but we are in the different spectrum, because we have volume, and we understand until certain extent how much things cost, and macro there, right?
It goes exactly back to what I said earlier, because as I mentioned, you get into this leadership role when you can actually start trusting them. It also has an interesting component. I'm very sure this applies to you and not just to real estate. When you have these trusting relationships, the interesting little side effect is you don't need that many. Like in my case,
100%.
we have 3 clusters all across the United States that we mainly work in, both for our clients and for me. I don't need to have houses in every state and every city.
Absolutely.
We have 3 positions. We have trusting relationships with those 3 turnkey providers, and that's all we need. And everybody's happy. Everybody has volume. Everybody can do their job. And obviously, it goes both ways. Those plumbers, electricians, turnkey providers, they also know that they don't have to be afraid that they don't have any work next month.
Exactly, or that they're not gonna get paid and so on. So
Yeah,
Axel,
exactly.
it's in love of our conversation, how people can find you, how this process work.
Well, it's very easy. You go to IdealWealthGrower.com, and then on the homepage in the top right-hand corner, there's a button that says book a call. It's fully complimentary. We talk, we see if we like each other, if we get along with each other, and then we can start working with each other.
Thank you so much. And on that note, see you guys in our next episode of Unstoppable. Thank you so much, Axel. That has been very inspiring and amazing. And I applaud you for what you're doing. And I applaud you even better for to provide solutions for the people that they are working hard, trading the time for money. Because guess what? If the money goes and do the work for you, money doesn't get tired. Money doesn't need day off, doesn't need holiday. He goes there and work hard for you. So we have to gradually stop working hard ourselves in order to get money and change the time for money and get our money go out and do the hard work for us. And you providing a vehicle to make that happen for everyone. Thank you so much, and see you guys in our next episode of Unstoppable. How brave entrepreneur like Axel break that wall and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.